Okay, this is more instant. All right, there we go. So let me go ahead and start the slideshow. So I'm going to be teaching Aries this evening. I'm going to be kind of going over the basics of Aries, um, and then I'll also be doing a little bit of charting. I'm trying to use my Mac, so I got my iPad the way I do my usual readings, and I'll be able to pull up some stuff. I do want to talk about all the Aries stuff going on right now, so that'll be a part of it. And then at the end, you can ask me questions that you might have. All right, so getting back into this. Oops. So, assuming that you guys are here and you know stuff about your chart, we're going to be looking at the house of Aries. We're going to be looking at the sign of Aries and Mars in your chart. So, what is Aries? The start of Aries season is the 21st through April 19th. It's like the official, I mean, technically it started yesterday already. It's a fire sign. The element is related to quick temper, immediate passion, enthusiasm, very hasty, very quick energy. It's not long lasting, it's very, very quick. Think of fire combusting. It is the first sign for a reason because it's coming out and it's immediately just like a whole bunch of energy. The ruling planet is Mars, albeit small, still packs a punch, and the symbol is a ram. So, what are some of the positive traits about Aries? One thing that I like to think about is if I have an Aries person near me, I know that it's like immediate, interaction, conversation. If there's an association with an air sign in their chart, then it's like very quick banter. It's very fun to me. My personal experience might be related to my own placements, right? But they are courageous, like they are going to be the ones who take up roles to do things. In their younger years, the more primitive form of Aries, it'll probably be like way more of an outcast and a solo person versus a team because they just care about themselves and what they need to do. They're the baby of the zodiac. When a child is born into this world, not for nothing, they're almost like sociopaths because they just know survival. They just know the primitive um, essence of living. Because if Earth is feminine and us humans act on a masculine impulse, that's all they know. But the sun being the natural place of the exaltation of Aries, we'll see why later on why that's a really good thing. High levels of energy right out the womb. The baby is crying and they won't shut up. And you're like, why are you able to cry for such a long period of time? And they just don't stop, right? You can find as well that they will be determined, but I really feel like it comes out to be um, they just don't want to they don't want to lose. They really don't want to be told that they can't obtain something. And so that's a lot of where their energy will come off. Um, and so that determination can become a bad thing because if you understand astrology, if I was to be someone that's going to be an enemy to an Aries person, all I'd have to do is just coax them into doing something. Like you just have to fiend or faint. I don't know how to say that word, but it's really easy to trigger an Aries person actually. And as they learn about that in themselves as they get older, they'll kind of realize that it's just their emotions. Um, they are stubborn people, so someone that can't let something go, all you have to do is get them to potentially be like, I really want to solve this thing. And you're like, no, you can't do it. And they're like, what? What do you mean? And so that gives them a short tempered burst of energy. And then it will most likely lead to an impulsive action. And you'll come to find that, it's a tragic thing because this person that really wants to reach for the sun. I can sometimes look at Aries in the sun position as like Rahu, where it's like it just wants to constantly attain something. And that short tempered emotion and that impulse can really lead them to burning out their own flame or snuffing themselves out. Like they didn't even get to launch because they stop the possibility of something with the long term because of their impulse actions. So, if we think about Aries, to understand the sign, we're going to be looking at the planet, right? Mars is an important planet because it is vitality, it's vigor, it's also raw sexual energy, it's desire, it's motivation. It's literally like just anytime I think of Mars, I just think of athletes. I think of mountain climbers, I think of sports players, I think of someone that's determined. I think of military, I think of army, I think of war, I think of overcoming, and I do think of Aries versus Scorpio. When I think Aries, it's a machine gun, and when I had covered the Scorpio, I had said this that Mars is truly just the ammo. Mars is I'm going to make it happen. But if I think of Aries, Mars in Aries is like I have a machine gun, and you're gonna get all of me for like 7 minutes. Whereas Scorpio, the traditional co-ruler, is like I'm a sniper rifle, and you're going to get me for 72 hours sitting in one position, patiently waiting to execute that one shot. And I'll make sure that I get you. Both of these applications really summarizes Mars and its polarities to me. And at the same time, it still pays homage and respect to how that energy wants to just go out and pierce. If we look as well in Mars placements, especially when Mars is in air signs, it gets to be pretty passive aggressive, but you will see, anger and aggression. I think about it as a simple survival sense. Um, Maybe if someone's triggered and they're on 24/7, then they could, always want to be in competition. But I really look at this and say, um, needing to survive when you're not thriving is a Mars thing. When you thrive, you're in a feminine state, you're in Venus. When you're surviving, you're in a masculine state, you're in Mars. If you work 24/7, no matter if you're already making money, no matter if you're wealthy and financially stable, if you're mentally always trying to attain more, you're always in a Martian state. And you truly never get to enjoy it until you go into a feminine state that is um, consuming, like pleasuring yourself, luxuries in a way where you can pause and not necessarily create more, but probably consume, right? Um, it is tied with war, the Roman god of war, like Aries. But I do think it's more of like, it goes back to that sort of power struggle for oneself, right? It's more than just Mars in that sense. I do think it's like your willpower and your ability to assert yourself onto the world. It's a very phallus like thing, it's a very extroverted like thing. And the biggest issue would be if you have like a planet in Mars that is, for instance, unable to see itself, like a Mars in Virgo or a Mars in Pisces, where they're overbearingly trying to fix or tweak or be submersive in your field or environment, or you have like a cardinal Mars, which is just like it needs to present itself, or a fixed Mars that doesn't want to change but wants things to be a specific way. This is where the acting on impulse, I think, is more of an immediate action, because someone with a Mars in Cancer will be a little bit more overbearing, but I'll still choose that than Mars in Capricorn because that's pretty cool. They're reliable, very reliable, but it's like that when they say no, it's no, you know. So the the sign that you have Mars in your charts, if you guys know it, feel free to share. But where you have it really does dictate how you like to survive, how you go about trials and tribulations, how you will express your endurance. Mars in Pisces, for instance, is very creative, versus Mars in Taurus is very pleasurable but very conservative, believe it or not. it might be what some people might see as a Capricorn placement at times, because it's like I need to make sure I walk on steady ground, right? So when we look at the housing system of where you do have your Mars placement, that's also right important. Um, Mars in the first house means you are essentially walking around as a Martian. I really think that that's like a very when I say this, it's not to attack the Mars, the Aries rising people, but it's a very primitive human thing. It's like Neolithic to me, where you just have to survive. Because then the journey of the soul, or the zodiacal wheel, would show you you get birth into living here in the first house, and then you're constantly going through the whole process of understanding what actually lets you not have to survive, gaining knowledge, making a family, having some sort of fun, having an everyday thing, creating long-term creating friendships that become long-term friendships that teach you about life, that then give you concrete ability to grow and evolve financially through one specific legacy or career that you can help the community, and then you can transcend to start over again. So the house that has Aries is imperative to know where it is that you have that vitality easily. So someone with a cancer rising, for instance, that has Mars in the 10th house, they're going to want to exert themselves onto the world. They're very much going to feel as though my 10th house Mars placement means that the world needs to feel me. The world needs to know that I am here. Because 10th house being that house of the career, the legacy, but it's really like, let me actually draw this out so that way it can be seen. I'm gonna actually switch over to this here, my iPad. I'm going to try to create a, a chart that has Mars as the rising or Aries here, and we can just take a look at this. So I'll draw it out. So when I say this, when you have, huh, silly me, I actually didn't mean to do that. I mean to do this. Okay, there we go. All right, so when you have the 10th house being Aries here, the line that separates the house, it's like the nadir, and so these are the darkest parts of the chart, darkness, and these are the light, right? As we're entering into fall, did I flip that? I don't think I flipped that. But what I'm trying to explain here is that the darkest part of the chart is the fourth house. Ironically, it's not the eighth house because it's your call. It's the fourth house. It's very private. It's very intimate. It's what you don't want to share. And so, if the darkest part of the chart is the fourth house, the lightest or the brightest part that you want to shine in would be the 10th house. So, someone having Aries here to me immediately shows me they have a lot that they need the world to see and share and know and feel. Um, it's a little worrisome, it's definitely like, um, can this person turn off at times? Are they always going to need to let the world know who they are, right? I don't ever look at something and say, oh no, this is like the most horrible thing ever. But I would assume someone that does have a 10th house in Aries probably has a bit of a difficulty with not having to constantly rebrand themselves to the world to see them. So when we look at the houses, and we think about where Aries would be, now we have to think about, well, what about the first house? Since we know that the first house is where Aries wants to be, and that is still a house that presents you, it presents your body, it presents yourself. Let's say I'm not an Aries rising and I'm a Libra rising or something else. You now got to consider that first house to be how it is that you are exerting yourself onto the world, how it is that you are presenting your energy onto the world. A little cool trick to think about is that the the element of your rising, oops, didn't mean to do that. The element of your rising sign is going to kind of show you how you deal with all of those energetically. What do I mean by that? All right, so let's say you're an air sign for your rising, correct? If you, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but I'll just leave it there. If you look at that and we think to ourselves, all right, if Aries wants to be the first house naturally, and here I have an air sign, so I would say in the first house, I have Gemini, where it naturally wants to be Aries. And so now I have a bunch of air signs there. So um, uh, my first, my fifth, and then my ninth houses are what I want to examine to see how it is that these are playing out. So I have Gemini, I have Libra, and then I have Aquarius. Oops, I have, there's the eighth house. This is a trifecta, and it's important to understand this because now air is in your fire houses. So someone with this archetype is going to probably be more of a versatile personality. Like they don't need to commit to the adventures that they go on. They don't need to commit to their willpower. Why would that be? Because if the first three signs of each quadrant in the zodiac are related to a age of the placement or what it is, I look at this as the um, infant, this is the kid, this is the teen or adult, and then this is the elder, right? So now the infantile, which would be Gemini rising here, and as they start to understand a whole bunch of different things about themselves, they're exerting that as their willpower, and then they bounce into how they have fun. With Libra, it's probably not going to be super committal. And then how they have fun, I should do this in a different color, how they look to actually stimulate their mind, they need a good conversation. They need something to be a lot more because Aquarius is sitting in the ninth house of higher education, and that also opposes their third house of communication here, and it's in Leo. So they're going to go for the more complex topics, and all that would stem from that first house and understanding that. You have Mars in Aries in the 12th house, Leo in the 4th, and Aquarius in the 10th. Wow. So that means you are a Taurus rising. Okay. So I'll just cover that real quick. So being a Taurus rising, having Mars in the 12th is really big on isolation, especially right now, as Neptune enters that house pretty soon here in your chart. You're really big on isolation and trying to figure out what it is that needs to kind of be seen. Like if I pull up whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's see if I can quickly fix that. If I can go ahead and take a look at that, and then I move here to the date 1/4/1/2025. All right, so you'll be pretty much in isolation, and this is what I'm saying. And I'm gonna actually segue into covering this soon at the end here. I'm almost done teaching, but that's something to keep in mind because your Martian um, presentation or that first house is Venusian. So it's Taurus. So you need your peace. You really like if your peace gets destabilized, it makes you go crazy. Because fun to you is having everything nice and orderly, having structure, having a sort of game plan, and understanding what could transpire because your fire sign houses are in an earth sign. So continuing on with this topic, looking at how it is that you want to dress, how it is you want to present yourself, I think are the first and fifth house, and then a little bit of the 11th. And you can look at that. If you are actually an Aries rising, I would consider dressing very Martian, wearing reds, being very bold in your makeup or your appearance, or like, wear your muscles out. If you're like Aquarius, don't be afraid to show a side of yourself that you feel that other people are not going to like, because it's like, hey, this is a part of me that wants to share, that wants to be um, open to the world, that wants to kind of just give. If you were to be like Leo, that's the hair. Just be dramatic. Um, it's very flamboyant. You know, I feel like Sagittarians are very classy and they just don't care. Um, the first house as well, that dressing, the undertones can be shown with the 12th, since that's the subconscious. So a Sag rising is going to be classy or very bold because their 12th house is Capricorn, and so they think about the finer things or the more expensive things in life, but they'll just be free with it. But they're like, I did notice the brand though. Okay, so let's talk about personality. The first house is going to give you who you are, as I stated as well. But I do think that there's more to this than just saying personality. Your first house will give you your personality if you are okay with the other houses in the axis. And while making the notes with this, um, we'll take a look here, because a lot of these notes, I simply just put prompts into ChatGPT so it helps me mentally, so I don't have to do a lot of thinking. That way, when I do teach, it's like scholastic and scholarly. It's almost like I'm giving a reading to save my brain power. But if I was to look at a chart, and let's just say I probably haven't covered, let's do a let's do a Pisces rising. I don't know what I'm feeling Pisces, but let's do Pisces, right? Let's say you're a Pisces rising. A good way to understand how you can express yourself with that first house is the other four, in terms of like the personality, not the how you want to have fun or how you look to communicate. The reason being is because here is you, and then here is ideally who you want, right? And then here is the life you want to eventually create for yourself on a status of like work. And then here is the version of you that wants family or peace or whatever it could be. But the first seven axis is really big because you're this person and you want to be with these type of people. So if you're a Pisces rising, clumsy, maybe a little bit forgetful, very aware of the friends that you have, very keen to think about them, very keen to remember them. And so people that are in your seventh house from that first house will let you understand yourself more. They'll let you feel more comfortable with yourself. You want to make longer term friendships with these people, unless, of course, there's very bad aspects to your first house or another placement in your chart. I wouldn't recommend that if that was the case, because, well, it would suck. you know, do what works best for you. So moving on from that, we're just about almost done here. Let's get into the planetary dignities. So we do have the domicile, we have the detriment, we have the exaltation and the fall. The domicile is the place it wants to be, right? It's where it can express itself naturally. The detriment is probably where it might feel challenged or it might not really want to be here, but it can still work. The exaltation is like the absolute perfect place that this energy wants to be, but it also matures the energy of that placement. And then the fall is where it's really not necessarily the best just because it's hard to control. And so all of these can be put into these categories, but I like to say the chart is important because you could have an exaltation and then the exaltation work towards your favor. And then you could have a detriment and the detriment works towards your favor, one or the other, right? So there's that. So I'm going to move on and cover that. So the domicile for Aries is, for Mars, is Aries and Scorpio because it lets you be bold and very direct. The detriment is going to be Libra and Taurus because that's the opposite of the energy. Libra and Taurus are feminine placements. They don't want to go and exert themselves. They want to stay to themselves and be treated and, be given things. The exaltation is Capricorn, and this is because of the discipline of Capricorn to these placements. I think that they are the most able to be consistent with these placements, with this placement. And then the fall is Cancer, just because it's a little bit too emotionally turbulent. Because Aries is usually very quick, and it'll go out of passion or anger, but then when you put Cancer in there, it can be confused. It's like, why do I feel this way as I'm in the middle of the fight? And that could be very difficult, and it might lash out, and it cannot control its impulse. And that really sums up Aries. I like to keep these short and sweet. It's a very introductory, beginner, basic level of astrology. And then now I'll stop the recording, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me.